Hello, I am Roberta Aberle, cancer patient advocate. Today I'm going to share with you just some segments of my keynote presentation that I have given across the country. My hope today is that you'll find my story interesting and inviting, and hopefully you'll be interested in having me come speak to your organization or foundation. So how I actually open my presentation, instead of telling people about the specifics or details of how I was diagnosed with cancer, instead I choose to bring them along with me on how it felt prior to and during my diagnosis. So I start out by asking the audience to just indulge me for a few minutes, close their eyes, think of themselves back home and outside of any environment that we're currently in. I ask them to envision waking up easily 20 minutes before their alarm goes off, but thinking, that's okay, because I am rested and I'm ready to start my day. I take them then through sailing through their day where they even have enough energy when they get to their place of work to climb 4 flights of stairs rather than puttering up the elevator. Going through project after project and just nailing it one thing after another, and even finding time to have an invigorating workout over lunch, where work is demanding but not draining. Work is asking everything of you, but it's so rewarding, rather than depleting you of everything that you feel you are trying to do in your life. Then I sail forward to when it's even so great of a day at work that you're able to leave work at a reasonable hour, and for the first time, very first time, you are the first to the restaurant to enjoy an evening out with your friends and not being the last to arrive, and sometimes even just having to call and cancel at the last minute. Falling into bed that night, just so thinking that, wow, my life couldn't be any better than this. And expecting the day to repeat itself all over again, and it starts out exactly that way. Waking up 20 minutes before the alarm goes up, but it's okay. But actually that second day is a little different, because the dinner from the night before isn't quite settling right, and that is new. So getting to the office and saying, you know what, I've got all these projects to do, but this time I am going to pick up that phone and I am going to contact that doctor, because I've had not only problems with what I've eaten over the last couple of weeks, but this little pain in my side that kind of keeps coming and going. And when I hang up that phone, I'm a little shocked because they've told me I need to go to the emergency department. And I'm thinking, wow, that seems like kind of a waste. I mean, you know, I'm just going to be chewing up precious ED resources, their time, my time, costs all over the board. But I comply, because this time I know it's just got to be fixed. I load up the computer and I'm watching for local ED wait times, and finally I see it, 10-minute wait. It's midweek before lunch and I'm grabbing my things and out the door, and I'm ready to get this thing fixed. Get to the emergency department and everything goes exactly as planned. And I'm even kind of joking with the nurses and say, gosh, you know, I mean, because of the location and the type of pain, at that point we're all thinking appendicitis. And I just ask, you know, my husband's traveling, my pets are home, I need to go home for at least a little bit. How emergent really does an emergency appendectomy need to be? And we all kind of joke and just say, let's wait and see what the test results show. And then time passes, and there's not a window in the place, but I can tell it's getting dark outside, and my frustration is mounting, and it's going to agitation. And everyone that's walking by, I'm asking, you know, I need to know my status. I need to know what's happening here. I need to get on with my life. But then 7 doctors pile into my small observation space, and I know something's wrong. Something is very wrong. That's how cancer happened to me. Little symptoms, little forewarning, and little preparation for the big cancer that would change my life forever. So then, in my speech, I do then talk about the specifics of my particular and very rare form of cancer, which is called primary peritoneal. It is unfortunately one of the most lethal cancers that's out there. But as kind of a relevant and key component of my speech, I don't just talk about the fact that I have cancer and I've gotten treatment. I talk about What are the things that happened that went right? What are the things that I knew? What went perfectly for me? And what do I wish I had known? What would I tell the person who's coming into the pipeline of being diagnosed with cancer? What can I do to help them? So the first two things that I talk about is, again, my cancer, very rare, very lethal. When I first met with the oncologist, it was a very, very dismal conversation. He basically said I was inoperable, that he didn't even think chemotherapy would work for me. And even when I asked him about the option for clinical trials, he just kind of shrugged his shoulder and said, it's a pretty lengthy process. And the subtext that I heard in that, he thought I would be dead before I would be enrolled. But that's what went right for me. Something went very right. That doctor, even though he didn't think I was a viable clinical trial patient, I pushed it. I was my own advocate. I challenged his opinion. And it's the best thing I ever did, because somehow I was fast-tracked, and within 10 days, I was in a clinical trial. And that clinical trial, I firmly believed, saved my life. Now, that clinical trial didn't cure me. I'm still fighting cancer today, 6 years after the fact. But what that clinical trial did do for me is it got me to the next place where chemotherapy and traditional standard lines of therapy would work for me. And then I was able to have surgery. And then I went into a different clinical trial. And I know that everybody out there is thinking, I'm not going to be a part of a clinical trial. They just want me as a guinea pig. They just want to capture data. And worse, they're just going to try things that they don't know work on me. And it's going to make me sicker. And I'm going to die anyway. So why should I be involved in a clinical trial? But I am here to tell you that even if a clinical trial cannot be your cure, it can, at the very least, be a stepping stone and be a forerunner to what comes next. So please don't ever exclude or reject any notion of a clinical trial. Science and pharmaceuticals have gone to the forefront today, where it is not about figuring out what works. Does it work? They're trying to figure out how does it work and in what combination with other treatments. Even the clinical trial I was on involved standard lines of care, and that was just the clinical trial component, the boost that got me forward and forward and forward. The second best thing that I would say that went right for me is I knew through the experience of other family members and cancer patients to create a My Lifeline site. Number one, that was the best thing I could do for myself. I was scared, I was terrified, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. I'm a very self-sufficient and professional, capable woman, but when it came to cancer, I had seen the devastation that it can wreak on a family and on a person. And the first thing I did, even before I saw that oncologist, was start my site. And it was the way that I could tell everybody, from not having to pick up the phone and not having to tell the story over and over and over, but to put the information out there one time in one place, and everybody would have the complete picture of what was happening. And that carried me through and carries me through to today. I rely on that site. There are just simply days when I don't have the energy to pick up the phone, and I can, through the voice of my lifeline, touch and reach my lifeline and tell them what's going on in my head. There is nothing more tiring than for somebody to ask you, text me after that appointment, let me know how that results goes. And you don't ever want to push those people aside, but sometimes, like I said, you just don't have the energy, and especially if it's bad news, you don't want to lose your composure. So my lifeline has always been a place for me, a safe place, my haven, if you will, where I can tell everybody what's going on at the exact time that it's happening. What I wish I had known, what I would have done differently, and what I would like to share in the forums that are touching and talking to patients nationwide is what are the 200 things that I would have done differently or wish I had known. But you can't bombard somebody with 200 things. So for now, I'll just boil them down to one or two. And again, when I do a keynote, I pay very close attention to my audience. Who is actually listening and who's going to benefit from this? So those two bits of advice are going to be different every time that I share my story. But in this case, when you're talking to a patient, the first thing that I would recommend is get yourself organized and get yourself organized immediately. Find a place that you call Command Central and use that one central place in your home for all the information that you assemble and collect and for all the information that's coming through various channels to you, through emails and through books. And the other bit of advice, kind of the subtext here of that advice, is as someone who loves someone who's going through cancer, instead of just sending them a book or sharing an article, read it for them. Give them a summary. Tell them the key points. Pull out the highlights. Copy it, go down to whatever printer you need, and just cull it down, condense it for them, because there can be nothing more intimidating than receiving 1,000 email messages with links to various sites. So help that cancer patient out and help them be organized on how they go about approaching their care. The second point of advice, and the thing that I would tell people who are newly diagnosed with cancer, is in addition to creating that My Lifeline site, get comfortable with asking for help quick, real quick. There is nothing about cancer that isn't going to overwhelm or overburden the most capable of person out there. When I was diagnosed, I thought, all right, here's my life. Here's where I'm going to fit cancer into it. And it just didn't work. I was okay. I got through it, but I wasn't getting better. And it wasn't until the point when I said, I need to get better, where I was able to relinquish that vulnerability and ask people for help. And a site like My Lifeline is so specifically, wonderfully suited for that need. You can put out on a calendar what days, what times, and what type of help you need. And even myself, as a user of My Lifeline, I will say I didn't use it to its full extent even from the beginning. So ask for help. Open the door for help. And for those of you who are out there who advise cancer patients or love someone with cancer, one way to get around that objection, one way to answer or deal with that, again, vulnerability of that person who says, it's so hard to ask for help. What you can tell them is, you know what? You need to focus on healing. You need to focus on getting better. Let others carry you through this phase. It is far more important for you to focus on taking your medications and getting your treatment and getting the rest you need than doing your laundry or emptying your dishwasher. So that's kind of it in short. The 4 big things. 2 things I feel like I did right. 2 things I wish I had done differently a little bit sooner in my process. In addition to just living, I continue my quest for a cure. I am continuing my quest for remission. Not, of course, just because I want to live, but because I want to get back to the work I love doing. I want to help patients. I want to help specifically cancer patients who are going through this experience and feel alone and feel terrified. And the beautiful thing is that so many of you are out there right now with that ability. And what I hope you take away from today is my story, my little sliver of what I've been through. But I hope that you feel that you are the one with the power. We have the insight and we have the intricate information about what it really feels like to go through cancer. But you are the ones who can take our information and make a difference in the lives of cancer patients out there every day.